joining. My name is John Mayfield, the real estate tech guy for Global Real Estate School and myrealestateexamcoach.com. That's correct. I have a brand new program that, by the way, is free for Global Real Estate School students. So if you are thinking about getting your real estate license in Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas, South Dakota, or Indiana, I'm actually including that right now. It's a limited time offer, so if you've just signed up, you should have a copy of that. And maybe we'll take a quick look at how that works and show you where that is. But anyway, it is free for Global Real Estate School students, and it is called My Real Estate Exam Coach. And it's very interesting. It's a lot of short, interactive videos. Also has practice questions. I'm including podcasts with all of this. We're still kind of finishing some of the final touches, so that's why I'm including it free right now. But lots of great resources. And again, I'll show you how that works a little bit later. But we need to get into studying for the real estate examination. And we've been looking at, and I'm going to jump over here real quickly to my display on my MacBook, so it should pop up here in just a second. We've been looking at Do Not Call, Can Spam Act. I don't like the Can Spam Act because I always do poorly on the test, although I did get a 90% yesterday, didn't I? So, and then we did the Do Not Fax. I don't like it either because I didn't do very well on it, but you know, I'm telling you, you're going to see a question or two from these specific categories. And I just want to make sure that you are familiar and that I shoot a video over these and we take our time, go through them. And hey, if we don't do well on the test, that's okay, because I think sometimes we learn when we miss a question. So anyway, we've done Do Not Call, Can Spam. Yesterday we did Do Not Fax. Today, we may look at antitrust. There might be one additional one of those weird ones that we want to look at, but we're going to look at antitrust. Now, just so you can remember how to get there, you want to go to Google and you want to type in NAR, and you could just type in Can Spam Act quiz, or you could type in Do Not Call quiz. And you'll see right here, either one of these, you can click on, and it brings the quiz up. Now, over here on the right, remember, you have Take Another Quiz. That's where we want to go. And I've been showing you some of the specific quizzes that you might want to make sure that you're familiar with. So, we want to go through all of these. I'd like to maybe do antitrust today. I was trying, lead-based paint. That's what I said we were going to do. Let's do lead-based paint, and then we're going to start from the beginning, work our way through all of these. So it's the federal right here. We did the federal fax laws yesterday. We want to do the federal lead-based paint today. Now, again, I want you to go out. A couple of things we need to make sure we understand. Number one, remember, Do Not Call and Can Spam both fall under whose jurisdiction? The Federal Trade Commission. But the fax laws, the federal fax laws, and of course think of, faxes and transmissions, those go under or fall under the Federal Communications, the FCC. So, could be a possible exam question. Just remember, Can Spam and Do Not Call, both under Federal Trade Commission, and federal fax laws, those fall under Federal Communications. So just want to make sure that you are on the same page there. And then from Google, be sure and just what I want you to do is let's just type in the lead-based paint disclosure laws. And if we come down here, we're looking for the government, and there it is, EPA.gov. So again, I just want you to understand what divisions or who takes care of these, because those could very well be exam questions. So lead-based paint, naturally it's a hazardous material. It's going to fall under EPA. There's a couple of questions I'm going to point out that you may very well see that come from the EPA. So again, over the next few weeks, we're trying to broadcast every day from 4 to 5, and I'm going to make sure or go over some of these kind of, topics that sometimes we don't look at as well for the real estate exam, but they like to put some questions on there. So you're going to do real well and pass that test on the first attempt. So again, lead-based paint, EPA, okay, Environmental Protection Agency. Federal fax laws, communication, the FCC. And do not call, can spam, Federal Trade Commission. Just fruits of knowledge. I don't know if that's the right thing to say, but good to put in your knowledge bank. Okay, your memory bank's what I'm looking for. There we go, memory bank. My wife would write that down because I have these weird things I say sometimes, and she's like, "What did you just say?" Okay, so we're going to look at real estate disclosures. Now, let's take a look at know your rights before you buy or lease. So let's go to home buyers right here and kind of look at some of the things here. Because again, you're going to see some questions from this, at least a question. So federal law requires that before being obligated under a contract to buy housing built, and there's the key right there, prior to 1978. See that? You only have to use this booklet and disclosure of lead-based paint for homes that were built prior to 1978. Now, you're going to see a lot, as you get in the business, you're going to see a lot of brokers require you to just do it on every transaction. And it's kind of irritating because the law says before 1978, and then you're going to hear some broker or some agent that say, well, if the EPA comes in to audit you and you don't have all of those forms, you're going to be in big trouble. In other words, if you just do it on some of them built after 1978, but not all of them, you're in trouble if you get audited. Well, I want to set the record straight. At our last Missouri Association of Missouri Realtors, we're called Missouri Realtors now. At our last quarterly Missouri Realtors meeting in St. Charles, Missouri in January, one of the groups that I was part of was a risk management group. Our speaker was from the EPA, and his primary division is on lead-based paint. And we asked that question, and he said, no, it's not true. They're not out trying to audit brokers. However, here's where you can get in trouble. Let's say you sell or rent a home that was built before 1978 and one of the children ingest lead-based paint, they get sick, they go to the hospital, they report it to the hospital, reports it to the EPA, they start digging around and investigating, and you as a real estate agent failed to get the things you need to get done for that transaction. In other words, the seller did not provide a lead-based paint disclosure document, you did not get it signed, you failed to give them the lead-based paint booklet. He said that's when you're going to get in trouble. And so just remember, as we go back over here, the law says you have to comply, and this is for landlords too, anything that was built, housing that was built to 1978. Now again, we're talking about residential housing. Commercial properties are exempt. Properties built after 1978 are exempt, so just keep that in mind. So if you're selling a home that was built prior to 1978, or you're renting a home that was built prior to 1978, then the first thing you have to do is provide this information pamphlet on identifying and controlling lead-based paint hazards titled Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. Now let's just open this up. And let's see if here it is right here. That's not the booklet I wanted to get, so I'm going to go back, and I think this is what I want. This is what I wanted to pull up. So this booklet right here, you have to give them. You can see that it is 20 pages right there. And it talks about things they need to know regarding lead-based paint. Now again, what's really cool today, and I'm telling you what, I think you're getting in real estate at a cool time, okay? First of all, we're doing everything electronic signatures, and we're probably going to do more of that. I mean, that's pretty much 99% of the contracts I have signed are done electronically. So you show a property, person likes the home, they go back home, they want to think about it, they call you up and say, yeah, we want to buy the home. And you say, great, I'll send you the information. I had a client this week, he wants to buy some land next to him. It's a buyer, and he said, I want to pay you a commission to write up the paperwork. Well, the guy lives way, like 45 minutes away from me. The seller lives in St. Louis. In the old days, I would have had to meet them at the property, which would have been an hour drive out, an hour and a half there, chit-chatting, writing the contract, and an hour back home. I spent less than 20 minutes typing the contract up. As I went online, I got the documents, I had the information. He gave me the price, the terms, their email addresses. I went into DocuSign or Forms or Us, prepared the contract, then went to DocuSign, uploaded, mailed out. In less than 20 minutes, I'm back upstairs with my family. In the old days, it would have taken 3.5 hours. Now, that was just a land sale, but when you do a contract, and it's a home built prior to 1978, just pull this document up, include it with a list of documents to sign, and then what I do is I just include a spot for them to sign on the document that they received it and the date. And so now I've complied, and I can check that off my checklist that I did provide this booklet to them because this home was built before 1978. So we'll get into that more in the practice course. I'm actually revamping my practice course because I want to incorporate some interesting things like this for you. But and we'll talk about how you can do DocuSign and contracts and so forth with that. But this booklet right here needs to be included and signed. So is an electronic version of this okay? I asked the gentleman that from an EPA, and he said, sure, it's not a problem at all with us. So that booklet has to be provided, and that takes us back over here. Remember, we were right here, housing built prior to 1978. This just says you need to provide this to them. The buyers must receive. Now, I go on and get it signed because I'm doing it electronically, but they must receive this. And notice it's from the home seller right there. I've got a great way to prospect for listings when you see a for sale by owner and it's a home built prior to 1978. You can kind of scare them straight into wanting to list their house with you by giving them some of these unknown things that they're supposed to do. This is a federal law. Secondly, if there's any known information concerning the presence of lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards in the home or building, you need to let them know that. Now, for multifamily unit buildings, this requirement includes records and reports concerning common areas and other units when such information was obtained as a result of building-wide evaluation. And this kind of goes along with, if there's any presence, it goes along with this next section. you have to include an attachment to the contract or language inserted in the contract that includes a lead warning statement and confirms that the seller has compiled with the notification requirements. Here's the form we get signed when we go out on a listing appointment, right here. This is a seller's disclosure. First, they would mark this box if there's known lead-based paint or other lead-based paint hazards present in the housing. Now, I have a rental house that I own. They tested the soil for lead, and there was lead in the soil. They stripped all of the soil out of the front yard and backyard and side yard, took it all down so deep, hauled the soil away, and then brought in new soil and put sod down. Didn't cost me anything. The St. Joe Minerals was doing that as part of an evaluation and cleanup in the Park Hills area. Lots of homes in Park Hills had that done. Well, me as a seller, I need to report that and mark that and explain what happened, okay? Most of the time, if a seller's never had their home evaluated, they maybe don't have any knowledge. So they would mark seller as no knowledge of lead-based paint. You would mark 2. B, records and reports available to the seller, check box. Seller has provided the purchaser with all available records and reports pertaining to lead-based, so I would need to supply those that I received from the company that did there's a name for that. Or if you have no evaluation done, you mark this, then you would probably mark seller as no reports or records pertaining. See that? So then down here, I have to initial, and you will too on your listing appointment, that you've informed the sellers of the obligations of this federal law of the seller's responsibility to make this information known. You don't know of anything and you don't have any reports, or, hey, I do know of something, and by the way, here's a report, or I can't find the report. And then the listing agent initials right here. Then the seller will sign it, date it, and you will sign it down here as the listing agent. Now notice there's a place for the purchaser to sign this. See that? And then this gets added to your listing agreement. This is a federal law. In fact, let me just take you over here. And for fun, we'll just log into the MLS, because you're going to be using, whether you're in the Maris, which is the Mid-America, or you're from another state. I'm going to read that later. Read later. Read later. And right here, I'm just going to go and look at, we'll go and look at one of my listings here, and this one on College, which is a cute little house. And I'm telling you what, if somebody went in and really did some work to this, you know, it could be really just, it could be a neat little home. It's got a lot of character. But here I'm in the MLS. Now right here is some little supplements. So here's my disclosure of lead-based paint. So if you were writing a contract, see, you would download that right there, and notice I marked the seller has no knowledge and the seller has no reports. Okay? Now, I do see something that I need to do and I forgot to do. I signed and dated, but I need to initial right here. So I'm going to have to fix that and get that re-uploaded and actually have that. I do a lot of my contracts on my iPad. It might be kind of fun, just so you can see how I do this. Because you know, what's that? All work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy, right? So I'll just very quickly show you how easy this is for me to fix this. And I'm glad I caught that, because that could be an auditing violation. So, and again, most times I've been on audits. It's not that big of a deal if you can kind of catch it in up front. You definitely don't want to wait and be in the middle of an audit. So I just pulled this up because I do all of my contracts. I type them at the client's home, and then I bring them up in this program called Notability, which you've probably seen me. Let me charge this up. It's a 0%, but it will just take about 15 seconds. So what I'm going to do is, well, I see that I have it right there, don't I? I must have, oh, that's a different College Street. I don't think I put, and I may have this under his name. Let me look here. There it is right there. Here's the seller's disclosure. And so now I'm going to initial that, and then I'm going to, because I'm going to put this in my Dropbox, and I'll send it to Dropbox. Now what we'll do is, I'm just going to hide this down here for us real quickly. And what I'm going to do is close this, and I'm going to edit my supplements right down here, and I'll actually delete this. And so now I'm going to click lead-based paint, type in lead-based paint disclosure, and I'm going to choose a file, and I put that in my Dropbox, didn't I? And it should be showing up over here, which is called, sometimes I like to sort these by the date they were added. And that's called Seller's Disclosure of Information. Maybe hasn't uploaded yet. But I will have that in my Dropbox, and I can quickly go in and add that. Oh, you know what? I bet that may have gone, because I have this little, I bet it went, I do not see it, but you kind of get the gist of what I'm talking about. I don't want to spend more time, but I wanted to just show you very quickly how I can use this. The other thing I could have done is just uploaded this over to AirDrop to my oh, I see where it went now. You have to know what file you put it in. So I put it in Dropbox, but I put it in a folder called, for some reason, I think, it showed it went into a folder called Sycamore, but I don't see Sycamore. Oh, I bet that was, there it is. Here's, well, I'll find that later and I'll get that put up. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I'll put that lead-based paint back up. But I wanted to just give you a quick idea that, we have to disclose this, and that's part of our responsibility. Okay, so again, that's going to be, and then the other reason I wanted to show you that in the MLS is, if I get a contract, or you're writing a contract on that home, you would download that, you would go into the MLS and you would download that form prior to writing a contract to make sure that the buyer signed it, because there's a place for the buyer to sign it and there's a place for you to sign it. And the other thing I should have shown you on that is that there's a 10-day period, and we were actually getting into that. So back over here, pulling that form back up, right here, when you write the contract with the purchaser, they're going to initial here, they've received all the copies, and they're also going to initial, they've received the pamphlet. Remember that pamphlet I showed you? So they need to initial those two places. Then they choose one of these. Do they want a 10-day opportunity to have a risk assessment to see if there's lead-based paint, or do they want to waive that opportunity? So again, they do have to, they'll need to initial these two items as the buyer and then choose one of these under E. Then they sign it as a purchaser and you sign it as their agent, and everyone dates it. Okay? So again, that's all part of this lead-based paint. Same thing applies if you're leasing property. Okay? So, and again, we're talking about single-family dwellings, but multi-unit buildings are required. Now, we're not talking about commercial properties, office space, single-family dwellings. All right? So let's go over it and do this quiz real quick and see what the choices are. Sellers and lessors. Now again, that's landlords. Remember, lessors must comply with the federal lead-based paint disclosure regulations for target housing, which is residential property constructed prior to 1978. Okay? In a residential sale transaction subject to the federal lead-based paint disclosure regulations, the disclosure requirements must be satisfied by, this is interesting here, all real estate professionals involved in the transaction, the listing agent, sellers and any listing agents they hire to market the property, sellers and their listing agents but never buyer's agents. I'm going to go with this one here. But you know what? Sometimes their questions are tricky, I think. We'll try that. Number 3. Almost all of the provisions of the federal lead-based paint disclosure regulations call for lead-based paint disclosures to be made to both purchasers and lessors of target housing. However, one provision of the federal regulations requires that the following information be disclosed only to purchasers. I don't remember seeing that, do you? But let's see. Any available records or reports pertaining to lead-based paint on the property, an approved lead-based paint information pamphlet. I think those are both everybody, lessors and sellers. Information about the opportunity to have the property tested for lead. Other information that may be available, such as basis of any determination that lead-based paint is present on the property, the location of any known lead-based paint hazards, or the condition of any lead-based painted surfaces. I think it would almost have to be, because it says one provision right here. One provision of the federal regulation requires that the following information be disclosed only to purchasers, not tenants. And I would think it would have to be this one, that a tenant couldn't just come in and want to inspect. But as bad as I did on canned spam, anything's possible. Okay, so number 4, the federal lead-based paint disclosure regulations require that sellers or their agents provide lead-based paint disclosures to purchasers and lessees in what time frame? What time frame? At any time before closing or move in case it's rental property. at least 10 days before closing or move-in in the case of rental property, before the purchaser or lessee is obligated under the contract for sale or lease, at the earliest practicable time after the purchaser or lessee expresses serious interest in purchase or leases. I'm going to say it's before the purchaser or lessee is obligated under the contract. That's what I'm thinking, but we'll try that. Number 5. The federal lead-based paint disclosure regulations require sellers or their agents to provide to purchasers a lead-based paint information pamphlet published by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development only, EPA HUD, or by state or local health agency approved by the National Institutes of Health, EPA HUD, or by state or local health agency that contains comparable information approved by EPA HUD, EPA HUD, or by state or local health agency, so long as the latter includes a disclaimer indicating it is not approved by EPA HUD. I have no idea. That's a trick question, isn't it? I don't think you'll see that question on the test. So if we miss it, that's a free one, okay? U.S. environmental, I don't know. Protect your family. Includes, I honestly have no idea on that question. So, I'm going to probably say the last one. That it's the EPA HUD or by state or local. But if it's EPA, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, if this was true, though, all of these choices have EPA HUD, so I don't know. Maybe it's this first one. I really don't know, and I don't think you'll see a question like that. But if you do, we're going to know the answer, right? Number 6, in addition to providing purchasers or lessees with the lead-based paint information pamphlet, sellers or their agents also must provide other lead-based paint disclosures regarding residents, including any known lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards, as well as copies of all available records and reports regarding. I like that one. Let's read on. Any lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards that are known or reasonably should be known. I think that eliminates this question, personally. Always read all your choices, because you never know. Any known lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards, as well as copies of all recent within the past 12 months. Well, I think that's what makes this wrong. Past 12 months. I mean, I still have to disclose my lead-based paint, and that's been a couple of years ago. So I'm going to eliminate that one. I like the first one, right? And the last one, any known lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards affecting other properties within reasonable proximity. I think that makes that wrong. So I'm going to go with A. But again, you're listening to a guy who did really not so great on the Can Spam Act quiz or the Do Not Facts quiz. So let's try number 7, the lead-based paint warning statement prescribed in the federal disclosure regulations and required to be included in the sales contracts and leases reminds purchasers, lessees that properties built prior to 1978 may have lead-based paint present, reminds them of the health hazards associated with the lead-based paint, especially to children and expectant mothers, and reminds sellers, landlords of their duty to provide information about lead-based paint hazards affecting the property. The warning statement may be revised so long as it is shortened and no substantial contact is altered for the limited purpose of making it more reader-friendly, to add explanatory language to make it less frightening. The warning statement may not be revised. I kind of think that's the answer. Number 8, any existing state or local lead-based paint requirements and disclosures obligations are preempted by the federal lead-based paint, are not preempted by federal lead-based paint, and are in full force and effect, are preempted by the federal. I don't think that would be preempted, but these are the ones that really trip me up, I should say. Maybe they're trick questions and they may trip me up. May be disregarded so long as sellers or lessors fully comply with the federal. May be disregarded so long as sellers or lessors. I'm going to say B. That's a tough one. So B. Number 9, which of the following residential properties does not have to comply with the federal lead-based paint disclosure regulations? Housing for the elderly where fewer than 2 children per unit are permitted to reside, property sold at a foreclosure, long-term vacation rentals from September to March in warm climates, automatic lease renewals on the same terms and conditions of the original lease for lessees signed prior to January 1st, 1994. Oh, that's one of those level 2 questions. I think it's property sold at foreclosure, because this would be, if it's an extension and a lease had been signed before 1994, it could have been signed before, but I don't know. There's a level 2 question. They're really wanting you to apply the law. And that's why I said a lot of these can be really tough questions. That's why I want us to go through these. Number 10, the penalties for failure to comply with the federal lead-based paint disclosure regulations include a civil penalty of up to $500 per disclosure violation, an injunction against further violations but no monetary, 3 times the actual damages to persons injured by the violation, and I think that is the answer that he told us at our meeting, rescission of the real estate transaction in which the disclosure violation occurred. I can't remember for sure, but I think it's this C. Well, let's just see how we did. And we got 9 out of 10. Whew, I feel good. Let's see which one we missed. This one right here, and I told you I just had no idea. The correct answer is EPA, HUD, or by a state or local health agency that contains comparable information. So again, just to go through these, correct answer, 1978. Number 2, sellers and any listing agents they hire to market the property. Remember, sellers and any listing agents. Number 3, information about the opportunity to have the property tested. That would not be something a tenant could do, but that could be done in a purchase contract. Number 4, before the purchaser lessee is obligated under the contract, you have to have that signed. In other words, you're not supposed to come back and get it signed later. A lot of agents do that, and they're not supposed to. I don't think you'll see that question there. But just remember, or by a state or local health agency that contains comparable information approved by EPA, HUD. 6, any known lead-based paint or hazards, copies of records. 7, the warning statement may not be revised. 8, you are not pre-exempted by federal lead-based paint disclosure regulations and are in full force notwithstanding the federal regulation. 9, property sold at a foreclosure. You don't have to get the lead-based paint sign. And number 10, 3 times the actual amount damages. That could be, that could be a question. Foreclosure could be a question. Several good questions there from this material. Well, there we have it. Lead-based paint. I feel better. I got a 90%. That's passing. I told you on that one question, I had no idea, and I really didn't, but I don't think you'll see a question like that. But there's several questions right from this material we went over that you very well could see on the exam. Well, I wish I hadn't taken a little time on the MLS. Maybe you found that interesting. I hope so. You're going to be using it as an agent, and I wanted to show you the fact that when you're working as a buyer's agent or representing a buyer or just working with a buyer who's a customer, remember, clients, you have a written agreement, customers, nothing signed. But if you're on that buyer's side, you need to log into the MLS and pull down some documents like the seller's disclosure and the lead-based paint and have that initialed and signed by your client or customer. And for me, as a listing agent, don't forget to initial that one little spot that I forgot to do. But you got to see me and how I do that. And I love my iPad. I love using that when I'm with clients at their home, getting new listings. So use it with buyers and sellers, typing contracts, and normally I can find that document real easy. But anyway, I hope you have a great weekend. It's Friday. I may come on over the weekend and do a live stream over some math or something, but I won't be back probably until Monday at 4 o'clock. So keep studying hard. By the way, Oklahoma, PSI is going to start testing April 13th. If you're in Missouri, because the governor has us shut down until April 30th, there's no word yet on PSI, but hopefully May 1st they will start testing again. So keep studying hard. Don't get discouraged. Remember, you can reach out to me anytime you have questions. And thank you so much for your business, and hope you have a great weekend. Talk to you soon.